Picture a girl in a black turtleneck staring into your eyes without blinking, promising to save the world with a single drop of blood. She convinced presidents, generals, and the wealthiest people on the planet. She became the youngest self-made female billionaire in history without even having a degree. There was just one tiny problem. Her revolutionary miracle machine worked no better than a broken toaster. This is the story of how Silicon Valley's greatest lie nearly cost people their lives. We all fear needles. Imagine a trip to the doctor. Giant syringes, liters of blood, long lines, and weeks of agonizing wait times for results. Now imagine a 19-year-old girl named Elizabeth Holmes. She drops out of prestigious Stanford University and declares, "I'm going to fix this." Her idea sounded like magic. Instead of draining a whole vial of blood, Elizabeth proposed using just one tiny drop, one painless finger prick, and a small device the size of a computer tower, which she named Edison, would instantly run hundreds of tests. It would detect cancer, diabetes, and infections in minutes. Elizabeth wasn't just an inventor, she was the perfect character. She always wore black turtlenecks, just like her idol Steve Jobs. She spoke in an unusually deep, masculine voice that commanded authority. And she never blinked when looking at her companion. Investors were ecstatic. They saw in her a Steve Jobs in a skirt. Money began to flow like a river. But while Elizabeth was appearing on magazine covers, her engineers in the lab were in a state of quiet horror. It turned out that the laws of physics cannot be cheated just because you have a cool turtleneck. There simply isn't enough material in one drop of blood to conduct hundreds of tests. The Edison machine constantly broke down, internal parts overheated and melted, and the results were so random they resembled fortune-telling. Essentially, Elizabeth was selling the world a box of blinking lights that contained nothing but chaos and lies. To understand what was happening at Theranos, imagine a very posh chef. He opens the most expensive restaurant in town and claims, "I can cook a royal banquet from a single drop of water." The wealthy line up and pay $1 million in advance. The night of the banquet arrives. The guests sit in the hall. The chef comes out with a radiant smile and shows them an empty pot, promising the magic is about to happen. But as soon as he steps into the kitchen where no one can see him, he panics, grabs his phone, and orders cheap burgers from a nearby joint. He then plates these burgers on gold dishes and serves them to the guests, passing them off as his own masterpieces. Elizabeth did exactly that. When she needed to prove to investors or partners from major pharmacies that her machine worked, she would take their blood, carry it into a locked room, and then secretly send those samples to standard laboratories belonging to her competitors. There, the blood was analyzed on giant, standard Siemens machines, and Elizabeth would pass the results off as the work of her Edison. She was literally building an empire by reselling others' services under her own brand, hoping that one day her engineers would actually invent what she had already promised. Elizabeth's appetite only grew. She managed to assemble a board of directors consisting of the most influential people in America, former secretaries of state, ministers of defense, and even future presidents took her word for it. Why? Because none of these powerful old men understood anything about biology, but they all wanted to be part of the future. Theranos didn't have a single peer-reviewed scientific article to its name, but if the Secretary of Defense believes you, who dares to ask questions? The company reached a valuation of $9 billion, based solely on the word of a girl who was very good at not blinking. In Silicon Valley, there is a popular saying, "Fake it till you make it." If you're building an app for sharing cat photos and it glitches, it's no big deal. But when you fake it in medicine, the stakes change. Theranos struck a deal with Walgreens, a massive pharmacy chain across the country. Ordinary people began coming in to have their blood tested using the new technology. Elizabeth knew her device produced erroneous results, but she ordered them to proceed anyway. To use the tiny drop of blood on her competitors' large machines, her employees began diluting the blood with saline. Imagine diluting a glass of juice with a bucket of water. Can you still taste the fruit? Hardly. Likewise, the test results turned into a dangerous lottery. Ordinary people began receiving results that shattered their lives. One woman was told she had miscarried, even though she was pregnant and the baby was healthy. Another man was falsely diagnosed with cancer and began preparing for death. Healthy people were told they were dying, while the seriously ill were told they were perfectly fine. Elizabeth Holmes was no longer just scamming the wealthy, she was playing roulette with the health of millions, fully aware that her miracle device was a fiction. Every great scam collapses because of one person who refuses to stay silent. Theranos employed young, talented scientists who quickly realized they were participating in a crime. Elizabeth created an atmosphere of paranoia. Employees couldn't talk to each other, guards were everywhere, and any criticism was punished by immediate firing and legal threats. But a brave journalist from the Wall Street Journal began to dig. He found former employees who told the truth about the burger kitchen. When the article was published, Elizabeth didn't admit guilt. She went on the counteroffensive, stating on television, "This is what happens when you work to change things. First, they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world." She tried to use her political connections to kill the story and silence witnesses, but it was too late. Government inspectors entered the Theranos labs and found chaos. It was revealed that the Edison had failed every single test. Even when the company was shut down and investors lost all $9 billion, Elizabeth continued to play her role. She found a new wealthy husband, had children, and tried to convince the court that she was merely a naive dreamer, misled by her evil assistant and secret lover. She believed until the very end that if she wore different clothes and changed her voice back to normal, the world would believe her again. But the magic was over. The judge delivered the verdict, 11 years in prison. The youngest billionaire had become the world's most famous inmate. The story of Theranos isn't just about one fraudster. It is a mirror of our belief in genius loners. We want so badly for someone young and bold to arrive and solve all our problems with a wave of a hand that we stop checking the facts. Elizabeth Holmes understood a fundamental human weakness. We love beautiful stories more than boring truths. She wasn't selling technology, she was selling hope. But in medicine, hope without science is poison. Today, the Theranos offices are empty, their equipment sold at auction, and the headquarters has turned into another faceless business center. But the ghost of Elizabeth still haunts Silicon Valley. Every time a new startup promises something impossible, investors now look at the test results instead of the color of the turtleneck. Interestingly, the actual technology for blood analysis from a single drop is actually possible. Hundreds of scientists around the world have been working on it for decades, but because of Elizabeth Holmes' scam, trust in this field was destroyed for years to come. With her lie, she didn't just steal money, she slowed down real progress that could have saved lives. In the end, there are no shortcuts to the truth. If someone promises to cook a feast from a single drop of water, the delivery guy with the cheap burgers is likely already at the back door, and you'll be the one paying for them with your health. Protect your investments, verify the facts, and remember, a true genius isn't afraid to blink, and they are always ready to show you exactly what is inside their box.